Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tosh Customs, and today we will be looking at my custom Star Wars Black Series Droid Warrior. And I'm just calling him the Droid Warrior because I really don't have like a cool, fancy Star Wars-y name for him. Him, I don't know. Do droids have gender? Who knows? But I'm just going to say him for now because I feel like it has more personality than an it. It seems like an object, and I think droids in Star Wars definitely have more character and more personality. So I'm going to run with him for the time being. This was a really, really interesting figure to build. And I think I can sum it up best by how the customer described Star Wars, which is a weird mix between like samurai, sci-fi, and cowboy. And that's very, very true. And so in trying to build this character, I don't do too much Star Wars stuff, honestly, but I was really, really intrigued to take this on because it wasn't like a Jedi or a Sith. I feel like the Jedi Sith, designs are pretty clear cut, robes with some armor. But a lot of the other stuff that sits within the universe doesn't have nearly as clear defined design criteria. And so being able to work on this guy was a really, really fun experiment. And I think he turned out great. I had the customer was great, had a really good design direction and a really good prompt for me to work with. And so it was just sort of filling out this idea that he already had. And so for different videos, I sort of have, I guess, kind of a theme to it in terms of like, oh, here's the thing I learned, or maybe here's the thing I want people to take away, whether it be like how to layer different blacks, black colors, or how to work with metals, or how to work with different materials. I definitely think for this one, it would be how to balance design. And that was a huge part of this figure and character, was how do we create an original character with a very balanced, even, and complete design. And so we'll be talking about that as we go through. But as we always do, we start with the accessories. So I'm going to move them off to the side, and let's get into it. The first thing we have is his Vibro Spear. I was looking at the Vibro axes, and I liked the design of them, and so I said, what if he had a spear? Something a little bit more heavy, a little bit stronger. And so here we go. Honestly, nothing too crazy, just black and silver. Very, very simple. This was an articulated icon spear, if I remember correctly, from one of their like Japanese samurai ninja figures. And so I painted it all black, and then I sprayed the blade with a chrome silver. And I think it turned out really, really nice. And this is all we need. He needed a simple, very direct melee weapon. And I really like that it's long, because this figure is pretty big and has very long arms, and so having a two-handed weapon that can kind of fit both hands and matches his size was really important. I mean, if you stand this spear up against a lot of 1/12 scale figures, the 1/12 scale figures fall kind of short, and this spear looks like it oversizes them and would maybe be a little bit too big or too heavy in some cases. And so I feel like the droid holding it feels like would be, strong enough and balanced enough to where this would be a very, very effective weapon. And so we'll look at the spear a little bit more later when we get to size comparisons. Taking a look at the two weapons the droid comes with. I have this laser shotgun or laser rifle. Me and the customer were talking about it, and we're saying that we want the droid to feel like he has both close range and long range options. And I'll explain more of the backstory when we get to the actual character design. But even looking at this shotgun, it has a scope on it, which implies range, but it definitely has a shotgun build without a stock and stuff like that. And so we're thinking almost a dual firing option or possibility that could be toggled between, kind of like Chewbacca's bowcaster. And so almost like a bigger, shorter range bolt for close range situations, and can be toggled to a, probably thinner, more precise beam of energy that had more range. and so in which he could employ the scope. So very cool design. This is from I forget his name, but he's from Rogue One. He's the guy with the giant barrel of ammo on his back, and this is where this sort of like pulse rifle, pulse shotgun is from. And so we just painted it up. It used to be in this very light gray color. I sprayed it all matte black and then painted some brown over it and then painted some silver weathering. I'm in my viewfinder right now, and I don't feel like the brown is coming through too much. You can see, sorry, camera shake. You can see a little bit of the brown like right here. It's very, very faint, and I feel like my lighting isn't picking it up too well. But there is brown in there. It's most definitely not pure black, and so there is brown in there. But I think against the contrast of the silver, it's hard for the camera to pick up off the top. Hopefully you'll be able to see the details on the figure. And then we have this pistol. This is from the Mandalorian figure, and pretty straightforward. I dry brushed some silver over the metal, so that's a little bit shinier, a little bit more crisp. You get some of that two-tone nature between the dark gray that this originally was and some of the silver sitting over top. And then just painted the inside of the barrel black, adding some depth to it. Oh, and then the shotgun, there is a little bit of green coming out of the barrel there, as you can see. That's pretty cool. Green lasers, always fun. So we're going to bring the figure in now. Let's talk about him. I might have to move my camera up so that you guys can get some closer looks at him. But the theme of this droid, well, one, we wanted to work with a droid warrior. The second thing we knew, we wanted it to be a K2SO droid, which premiered his look and I think has only been shown in Rogue One, Star Wars Rogue One. So that's the look we wanted. The prompt shot that I was originally sent when I was taking commissions was a K2SO droid with pants on and was holding a lightsaber. And the customer said, I want this droid who can fight. And so then, as we got into more DMs, he talked about how this droid would be a member of sort of like a Mandalorian hit squad, death squad type thing. And that we imagine this droid not to be necessarily the heavy gunner, but more of like the muscle of the group, if that makes sense. And so, droids obviously have inhuman strength because they're not human. And so, kind of taking that prompt and running with it, I was sitting there thinking, how do I take this skinnier droid, really, a very, very lanky droid, and how do I make him feel strong and muscular and add, and bring in these Star Wars elements? Because how do we differentiate this droid that we're going to be building from the standard one that, comes out of the Black Series box? What are we going to do with it? And so the first thing I started with was I want to fill him out more. And obviously the pants help fill out the legs. He no longer looks like he has totally just skinny stick legs. These help give him some weight around his leg area, which is perfect, adding the pants on there. And these pants, they are from a WWE set, like a WWE cloth set that you can like add on to those wrestling figures that I found on eBay. And so I just cut the legs off, glued the legs to the inside, and then put stuffing in it as well, which helps it give it a little bit more poof so that it doesn't just kind of hang loosely, but actually has some volume to it. And then as we talked about Mandalorian, I said, well, if he's going to be on a Mandalorian team, he should have Mandalorian-style armor. And so I mimicked the chest armor here, and I'm going to raise my camera real quick. I'm going to raise my camera up. There we go. That should be good. Relatively good. A little bit of drift there. Angle that, kind of fix it. Angle it up ever so slightly more. There we go. Cool. Now we can look at the head and the chest. So, styled it after Mandalorian style armor and just made it as plates that got just welded on to the body. And even working on some of those welding details, we have some edges that show some burn, some burn marking and stuff like that. It's just sort of burnt on and just adding extra padding to the body. Along with that, as sort of the muscle of the group, we said he needed to be more armored. And so I was thinking about more armored as well as having more firepower, because this guy, historically is kind of weak. I think in the Rogue One fight, he got shot a couple times in the back and he was just kind of done. So I decided to run with an asymmetrical design. And the reason I ran with asymmetrical is because it feels a little more scrapped together. There's an element of not necessarily randomness, but almost not perfect. And I think that's the best way to describe it. I even think of the Mandalorian's armor design from season 1, and how his armor is all scratched up and some parts are Beskar, some parts aren't, and how he's kind of going about his journey and cobbling together parts. And so we have this asymmetrical design where we have the right shoulder that has been extra reinforced, and we also have some more kind of Mandalorian style armor plating on the shoulder here, as well as extra armor plates and a spike on the joint. All of this just to add some extra padding to take that laser fire on the right side. And we obviously have a lot of weathering, some scratches and dirt and rust in there. And I've really enjoyed painting the dirt and rust and weathering, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the future of this video. Moving to the left shoulder now, we have the emblem. And I'll be honest, I've totally forgot the name of the beast offhand, but it is a Star Wars creature, and it showed up in Star Wars Rebels, I believe. And then coming down to the forearm, I wanted to mimic the battle droid blasters, like the super battle droid arm blasters. And so I took the antennas off a normal battle droid, like a Federation battle droid, and put it on the arm, and then sculpted this armor plate piece as well as sort of like this under metal strap, so that he could have a wrist blaster. And so in that way, he could block laser fire, or block anything really, on the right side, and then maybe kind of come around and blast with his left arm. So there's functionality to the armor now too, and the design. And I mentioned owning a battle droid earlier, and so in terms of filling out the design, we wanted him to look unique. If it's just a K2SO droid that has some extra armor on it, kind of boring. And so what I ended up doing was taking the battle droid arms off, drilling holes into the K2SO body, and then fitting in these new arms. And so now he has a secondary, smaller set of arms here. And I really, really like this because we had this great idea. If you guys are familiar with the video game Overwatch, there's a character named Reinhardt, and he has a move where he will sort of jet blast across the battlefield and grab someone and throw them up against a wall, or pin them up against the wall to do some damage, and also remove them from the sort of like the main arena of fighting. And so as we were thinking sort of about that, and a big, bulky, muscly character like this droid is supposed to represent, we said, why don't we kind of run our own spin on that? And so we have, these larger, stronger primary arms, and then we also have secondary arms that can allow him to, still grab stuff, still interact. He's able to use all four independently of each other. And so maybe even be able to dash across, grab people, or grab people with the longer arms, disarm them with the smaller ones, or still hold weapons and shoot them while he grabs them. And so now he's not limited to just using two big arms, but he has these smaller ones too. Just gives him some extra flexibility and movement, and some more, dynamic abilities on the battlefield as well. And I really, really love posing him up with all of his arms doing different things. I think he looks so cool. And we'll see a little bit more of that both in the photos that I post on Instagram, as well as I'll cover a little bit, some more of it in the video. Moving down to the legs, there wasn't much to do armor-wise, and once again, because he's supposed to be the muscle, but we didn't want him to be heavy, so we wanted him to be able to give him the ability to move. And so I painted the armor up differently so that you get some differentiation. You feel like the red kind of represents extra padding on him, and so then the black feels a little bit lighter and more like standard K2SO droid body. So even though there's nothing necessarily added to the figure, the paint job and the way we've applied it does give off the idea that there is certain extra armor in other places. And so that's sort of just a smart way to use your paint. So even though we're not editing as much on the legs, it feels like there's been a lot added. And it changes the way the droid feels weighted, because we look at extra armor padding, we say, oh, this is extra, this has to be heavier. And so it naturally gives him some more balance in there. So we've talked about all that. So I'm going to move around to the back now, talk about what we did on the back here. So from also the battle droid, I took this little comms unit that can peg onto the droid's back. I sanded it down and connected it to the shoulder piece, and then also painted these antennas up. So as you can see, we have a black one and a red one. I wanted to do a red one, just to have it like a red antenna light. I just thought it would be cool. And then on the other side here, we have a mortar pack. And I thought it would be cool since the droid is made for, being the heavy hitter, the muscle, and having the ability to kind of clear the battlefield. He has this boost and this burst that he should be able to cross the battlefield with and throw opponents out of the way. Having a mortar strike to almost disorient enemies, push them back off of advantageous angles or lines on the battlefield, I think would be important. So he can almost, launch his strike and then rush in and, kind of work off of the element of the explosions landing. So I have a mortar on his back, and then we were talking about that boost function. And so what I have right here is this jetpack piece with a fuel tank. And so it allows him to take this quick burst, or maybe even like a short hover off the ground. This jet piece comes from Hank the Engineer, which is a figure from, I forget the company who makes it, but it's from the game Evolve that came out a couple years ago. Not a couple, it's been quite a few years now, I guess. But yeah, Hank has these jet boosters, and so I took one of them and I connected it to the back of the droid, as well as this fuel tank, which is some reused parts from an old Bane figure. So I think that covers most of the parts now, and so I want to talk about some of the paint a little bit. Also, I sculpted the head. As you can see, we have all this extra sculpted plating on the head now, and I think that looks really, really wonderful. The customer sent me this great photo of this K2SO droid with almost like a Sith helmet mask over it. And so he was like, I want to have plating on this droid. And so I came up with this design, which, to a degree, mimics some Mandalorian helmets. Obviously not all the way, because he has these two really wide set eyes and this whole mouth comm piece. But kind of how, the helmet separates around the eyes, kind of working on that eye design that narrows to the front. And so even though it's not a Mandalorian helmet, kind of working to mimic some of those design ideas, even within the armor plating and the reinforcement itself. And so he's got some really cool reinforcement around the head. And I really love those clean lines, cutting across the eyes like that. I think that's super, super fun. I learned a lot about weathering on this guy. I really, really learned a lot. Not a lot of I do weathering in terms of armor scratches and things like that, but working on a droid who's been on the battlefield, there's a lot of dirt and rust that plays into the paint of this figure. And so even like coming to just like the hip section right here, I had to create paint that was that looked like a little bit more rust and not only dirt, but we do have some dirt, but then there's sort of this like brown layer that sits over some of this silver, and there's hints of gold in there as well. And so, creating some more rust elements, and even you can see here, let me change the zoom. There we go. You can see that there's these like streaks running down from the chest armor right there. And so even working to create a little bit of almost like water damage and stuff on the figure was really, really important to me. And so, trying to, mimic and match all these different elements that the droid has been in and through on the battlefield. And then, in thinking about, these sort of heavy worn out battles, also creating wear and tear, both in the sculpt and in the paint on the chest and just around, dry brushing sort of like a faint black and then even coming over with another layer of red, so that you get this faded look, and you get some of these like burns on the armor pieces. And you can see sort of wherever I put scratches, I'm also putting some black paint to imply, laser burn and that excessive heat across the metal. Another interesting thing I kind of had to solve on this guy was the droid arms. We talked about how cool this having secondary arms are, and I really, really love them. I think they're great. But because they were from the battle droid, they had paint rub in them as I sprayed them black. And the reason why there's paint rub, well, the way these joints are, is just not really like a way to take them apart unless you cut through them. And I didn't want to do that because these arms are so thin already. Like, there's not many points of traction compared to bigger jointed arms. And so to cut through them and try to fix, and try to shave them down, I was afraid I was going to lose all traction in the arms together. So instead of doing that, I decided to, because they're kind of a rust color already, having the joints sprayed black and then having this brown show through just looks like rust as it is. And once again, that's why I worked on adding some more, rust and dirt coloring around the rest of the figure as well, just to kind of add in and play off of that. And so for me, that was just a creative way. And thankfully, the paint rub isn't too bad. It really comes just kind of like in little splotches, not even over the whole joint. And so as you can see, like the whole outside bit really holds its paint well. Even if I bend it back and bend it forward, it holds its paint well. So it really does look splotchy like rust bits. And so thankfully, that wasn't an issue I really had to think about or worry about too much, because we were able to cover it with paint. Coming to the arms, though, did a lot of weathering, and I wanted to highlight this little joint piece that runs across the front, and so on both sides, they're picked out in a pretty neat chrome silver, and then bringing in a lot more of those dirt browns and those silvers across the arms, so that, the wear and tear is evenly dispersed across the figure. And so very, very fun stuff. I think I got to flex a lot creatively and do a lot that I normally don't get to do or experiment with. And so very, very fun and exciting. In terms of paint, this guy normally comes in sort of like a gunmetal gray color. And so I sprayed him all matte black first, and then I sprayed him a gunmetal, and so that's why you can see that sparkle throughout the suit. But now the sparkle has some more depth. And then after that, the rest was hand painted in terms of the reds and all the wear and tear. And you really just need to do it by hand to get that level of detail in there. We actually do also have some green elements, like within this mortar launcher here. I wanted it to feel military, and it honestly looked really boring if it was just a black block on his back. And so because of that, I added some of this military olive green into it. And while it's not, it's not incredibly visible or present, it does add some difference, as you can see when I focus the camera. You can tell. It's not too harsh of a difference, but you can see the green, and that just helps break up the sort of like the color palette of the figure. There's a lot of blacks and grays and metals, and so finding ways to take these different unique elements on the suit and pick them out and balance them out is really good, because you don't want any color to feel so overpowering or be so dominant and present on your character that the details are lost. If everything's one color, everything kind of sits within too close of a color palette, you're going to lose some of the details. And so finding unique ways to pick it out. And so even bringing just in a little bit of that olive green in there helps pick it out. And I do put some olive green also on the little booster pack on his back too. So we see some of that olive green plating right here on the sides of the jet. I did a lot of little highlighting on all these little lines and bits. You can see a blue dot in there. You can see some yellow. You can see some yellow lines right there, as well as a bunch of little colored lines and lights all around the torso area, as well as some white lights in the legs and the arms. And all of that, also some blues and stuff up there. All of that is just to bring in some more detail. It's really simple to overlook a lot of those different design elements, but if you bring them in, it gives just a lot more depth and highlights the figure to a much, much higher degree. And so I think this guy was really all about detail, but detail and balancing, and that's what I want to talk about more as we kind of come to the end of this video, is how to, I'm going to bring my camera lower again once I balance him out. There we go. I'm going to drag this camera down and out. There we go. I want to talk about how to balance the design of a character, because that is something that I definitely struggled with on this guy. How in the world do I armor up this droid and do it in an asymmetrical fashion that still feels cohesive? And so you have to, I think the best way to do it is think about weight on a figure or on a character and go, how do they disperse this weight evenly? And there's honestly some characters that you can design and just be real stylish with it and not balance it at all. But in this case, I wanted him to feel very functional. And so if all his weight is leaning to one side or the other, it just doesn't work. And so for this guy, what you'll see is that we have some very heavy plating on the right side of his body here. Very heavy, reinforced, obviously able to take more firepower. If we're adding a lot of weight and plating on this side, how do we balance that? Well, we can balance it, at least on the top half, because, this is asymmetrical on the shoulders. The shoulder is higher and heavier. I balance that with the mortar. So now I have the mortar on this side so that it doesn't feel like he should be weighted and leaning to one side. But now he has all this weight pulling and he's got something to counterbalance that. Likewise, the reason why I have the pistol holster on this side, one, it's a very stylish thing because it allows the droid to cross draw. He reaches across and pulls his pistol out. And so here, I'll just show you guys. I think it's a really, really fun little way to store the pistol, because I've had him in poses where he's been kind of putting his little droid hand over the pistol there. And then when he's ready to go, he can just flick his hand across and pull it out and shoot. And the droid hand actually does hold the pistol, which is really great, and I love it. It holds the pistol so, so well. It's got a very, very cowboy revolver look to it. So he draws out, just goes pew, pew. So I really, really like that. But we have this heavy armor running down this side, as well as we have this spike. And so our shoulders are balanced now because we have this extra weight. But we need to balance it all the way down the body. And so because we need to balance it all the way down the body, that's why we have the holster on this side. The holster on this side adds some extra weight on the lower half, so that as you see all this extra armor and plating on the right side, the left side counterbalances that. And likewise, that's why we also have the blaster here with the hard armor red piece, so that we have some balance of hard armor on, reinforced armor on either side, but obviously still a much lighter arm. And because it's lighter, we have the blaster, which provides an extra function, so that this arm is not just lighter, and less armored to be lighter and less armored, but it, these two sides actually work in tandem, where he can turn to one side and block, and then add firepower from the left side. Another thing to talk about is not only the balance of weight, but the balance of height. So because we have a heavier side here, we needed to add more weight on this side. But what adding this mortar launcher or this rocket pod on the left side does is it adds extra height. And so it's coming up to the, to the side of the head here. Whereas normally, if I blocked these out, that's sort of what the frame of the body should look like. And so adding this here, it adds some extra height. And so now it feels like stuff is peeking up towards his head, and it's a little invasive, honestly, if you just leave it on one side alone. But that's why we have the antennas, and we bring the antennas in. And so the antennas, they help balance out and even out that height. And it actually comes higher, but because it's thinner, it's less invasive on the total silhouette of the figure compared to this mortar launcher is. And so now it helps balance out the added height of the mortar launcher while not nearly having as much of a presence. And so in that way, we're also balancing out the height, the height of the figure and sort of like the stuff, all the stuff on his back, so that everything feels equal. And that's a really important thing, is that you can design something asymmetrically, but not unevenly. And that was the goal of this design here. And so a lot of thought went into the creation of this guy. I think it's really easy to look at it and go, oh, you smacked some arms on, you smacked some pants on, you put some armor here, you did a little bit of this, and then you just kind of painted him up. But there's a lot of nuance to these design elements, so that when you look at the character, you don't go, oh, he should be leaning all to his right side, or he should be leaning all to his left side. Or like if we pulled these antennas out, you go, oh, wow, because now you see it. When you pull the antennas out, now you realize this comes up really high and is kind of gross on his shoulder. But now that you add the antennas in, let me find those ports again. Now that you add the antennas in, it feels even and is so much better on the eyes. And so there are these weird, however the human brain works, there's these different nuances of what we have to do and add into our elements of design so that they feel even and balanced. And, even in the trick of the eyes and that painting these red so that, the lower legs feel standard while these feel extra reinforced. All those little elements play into the design of the character. There's a lot of other details I could talk about, honestly. So many little paint things in terms of how I painted them asymmetrically. Like even if we come to the legs here, you'll notice that this lower thicker joint is painted in silver, while the upper thinner joint on this side is painted in silver. There's a ton of little things like that all over the figure. As you can see, this armor pad on the right side actually has some leather brown paint throughout the inner arm, so that it feels like the arm actually has a strap on it that's connecting the plating down. So there's a bunch of little tiny things. We have some panels here that are done in a, there we go, let me center this, that are done in a lighter gray. And you can see we have one right here. We also have another one on the back of the right leg. And then even the toe caps here. One toe cap is, see if that camera will lighten it. You can kind of see it. This toe cap is actually done in a little bit of a lighter gray, while this one is done in a deeper black. And you can see that this one is slightly lighter. And so just different things like that to add some, more interesting elements to the character. I think it was very important to me that no details were kind of missed out or lost on this guy, but that, all the details in his sculpt that he had already, as well as all the details we were adding, were all evenly highlighted and picked out. So really quick, let me pose him up for you so that you can kind of see what he can look like in all his glory, because I think he can look really, really cool. And then we'll end this video because we're running on 32 minutes already. This is a little bit of a long one. But I love putting this shotgun in one hand here, holding it across. I can let this, hand hang out dramatically, or I can, make him hold it with both. So we'll make him hold it with both for this pose. And then you can have him pulling his pistol out there as well. And then we can also give him his spear. He can hold his spear. Ooh, that slides. He normally holds his spear in his big hand, but for the sake of the pose and for the sake of me holding his shotgun, I'm going to make a smaller hand hold it. See if I can balance that out somehow. It's okay. It's okay just like that for now. But yeah, so just a very, very fun and dynamic character. And it was such a pleasure, there we go, to be able to build him and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm just very proud of how he turned out. I think we accomplished everything that we wanted to with this guy. We had a really cool prompt, or some really cool design elements, and then just being able to take all these different ideas we had and bring it together and make a very unique character, one that feels like it fits within the Star Wars universe very well, and I think one that completes our idea, of a heavier muscle to a death squad, while still being a K2SO drone, and recognizably one while still recognizably unique. We did talk about size though, and I should do that before we end. Here is the Major Blood G.I. Joe Classified Series figure right here. Let me stand him up. This is your standard, kind of 1/12 6-inch figure. I think the classified series may stand a little bit short to some other lines, but I think they're a pretty good baseline at this point for how, for what a 1/12 character is. So what you'll see here is how really big this, oh, did the pistol holster just fall off? It did. It's okay. I'll fix that before it ships out. That's the issue with gluing to leather, is it can be a little bit finicky. Sorry about that. Don't worry though, it'll get fixed. Whoops. That's unfortunate. But anyways, you can see this K2SO droid stands significantly taller than Major Blood. And then the other thing you'll see is the spear stands taller than Major Blood too, which is what I was talking about, is that this spear is actually very, very hefty, very, very tall. And so having it in the droid's hands works a lot better. Getting it tabbed right in there into his hand. He holds it in a lot more of a fitting manner, and it fits his height so much more. Even to have him wield it with two hands, like so, and just sort of tabbed it into the other hand there. You can see that he looks a lot more intimidating with it, and it fits the overall length of his body. So, yeah, thank you all for watching. Sorry about the little holster mishap. The holster was connected to a faux leather piece, and faux leather doesn't happen to really like holding super glue very well. So I'll get an elastic band to run behind there so that it grips a little bit better. But yeah, sorry you guys had to see that. It happens sometimes. These reviews and like really tinkering with the figures help me knock out any kinks that I might see, and this just happens to be one of them. I was a little bit worried about the super glue, but I was hoping it was going to stick, but obviously it didn't. So I'll fix that up before he ships out. But hopefully that doesn't take away from anything you guys saw in the video today. Thank you all for watching. I say this at the end of every video, but if you guys want to see more, if you want to see my work in progress, and just kind of keep up a little bit more with the daily stuff that I'm working on, follow me at my Instagram page at Tosh_customs. I have my username in the description of this video, as well as a direct link to my page in the About section of my channel. And yeah, this is the first of many commissions I am working on this summer. And so I'm excited to show him off to you, and excited to show you the other stuff that I've been working on as well in the coming weeks. So thank you all for watching, and take care.